Hello and welcome to Comedy in a Nutshell, where comedians take something instinctive, overanalyze it completely, and then try and put it back together before anyone notices. It's part craft, part chaos, and part realising mid-answer that you didn't remember or understand the question. Because if comedy were easy to explain, this would be a much shorter show. I'm the comedy nerd who's seen more than 2,000 different comedians perform live comedy, and you can find out more about my journey in comedy fandom on my website, thecomedynerd.com. Please also take a moment to like, subscribe, rate, review, and share the podcast. Thank you. My guest this episode is an award-winning comedian, author, and illustrator whose comedy is just as inventive as it is gloriously silly. A regular favourite at the Edinburgh Fringe, they won Best Joke of the Fringe in 2019 with a one-liner so brilliantly ridiculous it instantly became comedy folklore. Alongside stand-up, they're the creator of hit children's books, including Trixie Pickle Art Avenger, bringing the same playful imagination to both the page and the stage. It's comedian Olaf Falafel.
Let's do it.
Okay, so let's start with comedy as an influence on you growing up. Was it a big thing in the family back then?
It's a weird one because I hear lots of podcasts with comedians who say that they were like really into stand-up and they would listen to specials by Eddie Murphy and Bill Cosby and Bill Hicks, and I wasn't one of these comedy nerds. I wasn't always keeping my eye out for stand-up specials and tapes and videos and records and that sort of thing. But I guess I was of an era where things I liked were, I liked Harry Enfield. I remember at school, that was like a massive thing.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think what kind of things. I mean, there were some really rubbish kind of sitcoms that I can't say I liked particularly, but I remember things like Brushstrokes and and I can't say that they were like formative of my comedy at all, but I just remember my dad liking them and my mum sort of, and there were little catchphrase, ever decreasing circles and things like that. That was kind of my kind of first sort of experiences of comedy, and watching my parents laugh at things and thinking, well, what's funny about that? And I didn't find a lot of it funny, to be honest. And I couldn't tell the difference between a comedy and I used to watch stuff like Howard's Way. I don't know if you remember that. It was really boring about people. Were they in Southampton or a shipyard somewhere? And it was just, oh God.
Just remember the yachts.
Yeah. And then Drop the Dead Donkey was one where I think I first started thinking, actually that did lead on to something I did appreciate. I did really like was Whose Line Is It Anyway? That was something I really did. And it's really funny because now I'd be like, oh, improv, no. But actually, I don't know why there's that snobbery around it. I guess bad improv is bad, but then bad comedy is bad. But yeah, Whose Line Is It Anyway was good. A lot of the cool kids say the young ones, but I missed the young ones, and I kind of subsequently watched it and appreciated it, but I wasn't quite the right age for that. I do actually, there is one lasting comedy memory. So it's actually one of my brother's best mates, but me and my older brother, there's only a year between us. So his mates were my mates. Yeah. And at my school, you could leave school for lunch if you lived near, and his friend lived on the same road as school. So we would take our packed lunches to our mate's house and he would play video cassettes of Blackadder. And he did have a stand-up special that was Billy Connolly. And I remember watching that, finding it really funny. But the lasting memory is my mate had an older sister who, I guess at the time, we'd have been I'd probably been 12, 13. Older sister would have probably been 19. And there was a line, and I can't even remember it. There was a line. Billy Connolly was talking about poos that don't flush. Yeah. And he was calling them flirters. It's a flirter. And I just remember him saying the word flirter, but in that Scottish accent. And I just kept saying flirter. And I just kept saying it to the point it was really annoying. And his sister basically told me, was getting really annoyed by me to keep saying flirter. And she issued me an ultimatum. If I said it once more, she'd kick me out. And that to me was like the cheeky schoolboy, literal cheeky schoolboy was like, well, I'm going to say it one more time. And she did kick me out. So I got kicked out of her house for saying flirters. And that was 35 years ago. And she probably doesn't realise that she had a lasting influence on my comedy career. Yeah, she kicked me out of the house. So Lorna, if you're listening, Lorna won't be listening, but yeah, you kicking me out for saying flirters. There was some kind of butterfly effect there that meant I became a comedian. It probably didn't. It would have happened anyway, or it wouldn't. I don't know.
Well, what was that path then that you took into doing comedy? What, apart from obviously Lorna's huge influence on you, what then was the next step?
I use the term the cool kids. They're not everyone. Everyone's cool in comedy. Most of us, most people are cool in comedy. There's very few bad eggs. Most people I meet are lovely, and that's one of the nice things I think about doing comedy is you constantly meet new people. And all right, everyone has their little eccentricities, but on the whole, most people are pretty nice people and pretty. There is no. I mean, there are a few absolute horrors, but they quickly get outed. And there's quite a nice self-policing system within comedy, which is nice. And I'm talking people just being dicks and also more serious stuff in terms of being, well, misogynistic and downright creepy towards female comics or non-binary comics. And so I like to think that it's a pretty good self-policing system, and there will be other comedians out there who've had horrible experiences who will tell me otherwise. But and I am coming at this from a point of privilege as a tall, white, straight man. So anyway, back to the cool kids. They all started when they were quite young, whereas I started very old, at the ripe old age of. I should know exactly how old I was because my first gig was the day of my second daughter's birth, which is coming up to 15 years. 15 years, July the 3rd. So I would have been doing the math. 34 was my first gig, age 34. So a lot of comedians will start in their sort of 20s. Yeah. So I had a good 15 years. But I never really had, I wasn't like an avid stand-up fan. Like I said, I wasn't like constantly getting the new stand-up specials or not that there were vehicles really for that apart from Lee Evans cassettes and stuff like that, which I did. It wasn't really my thing. And other kids were sort of talking about Eddie Izzard doing this or I was like, okay. But what I did love and I still do, and it kind of was it was my job. It sort of still is. I was really into design and art, and I got a job in advertising, and I was the one creative who, if you had a brief that needed a little bit of comedy in there or needed a joke or a light touch or something funny to happen, they would give it to me, and I would try and add a little bit of personality. And so I worked in some places that had some quite dry clients or clients that needed quite a smooth, sophisticated look, like trying to pluck some out of them. Saab, the car company, they were all very kind of witty and dry and a great look, and the typography was very. They would never give me that because I actually got nicknamed Timmy Mallet by one of the designers who sat just next to me, because everything that I did, I'd be like, yeah, let's just make it fun. Make it. I mean, you can. For the benefit of the tape, behind me, it's a very Timmy Mallet lurid kind of concoction of paintings and drawings and things that I've done myself. And I do like bright colours, and I do like fun typography. And so I would always try, that was my kind of vent for my humour and my comedy was my work, which was design and advertising. And a lot of the stuff that I would come up with would never get made because they were like, the client would love it and they'd love it and they'd love it. And then they'd try and get money off their bosses to make it. And they'd be like, yeah, we need to go down a safe route. So I would always try and do things that were a little bit different. And, so that was really my outlet for my humor. And I used to love adverts that had, I used to buy books about humor in advertising and graphic wit. And I liked art that had a sense of humor as well. I love the surrealist artists like René Magritte and just anyone who kind of would put a little. Dali was perhaps a bit more serious than funny, but Duchamp, anyone who just did something that was a little bit unexpected, a little bit strange, and so yeah, that was really my thing. And my journey to being an actual comedian came from a design place I was working at, and one of the account guys, so the suits, the people who kind of liaised with the client, they were the middleman between the wacky creatives who'd be sat in their cupboards coming up with strange ideas for things, and then the serious money side will do a timeline, we'll talk budgets, we'll talk deadlines, these guys. Yeah. So there was a buffer between us and they can't let us out and meet people. He was a guy who I'm still really good friends with. He was one of these guys who does a lot of stuff. He now runs a comedy festival. He still does a lot of kind of designy creative stuff, or he's in that world a bit. He also has his own bookshop. He was running a comedy festival in a place called Tring. I don't know if you know Tring in Hertfordshire, and it is called the Tringe. Yeah. So the Tring Fringe. And he'd done it once before. And then I think his next year he had this idea. So in the village next to him at the time, I don't know whether he still lives there, is a man called Logan Murray. Do you know Logan? Yeah. And I'm sure his name's come up before. And he, as well as being a great comedian in his own right, runs stand-up courses, and he has taught loads of comedians and people that you'll know, like Greg Davis and Andy Osho, and lots of different comedians. And he lived in the next village, and my mate had this idea. He said, well, why don't we get 12 people who've never done comedy before, and we will get Logan to give them 8 weeks of intensive training. And then at the end of those 8 weeks, it will be the first to kick off my Tringe. Right. His thing lasts for about a month, and it's acts doing their Edinburgh previews. Yeah. So to kick that off, we'll kick it off with a night that I'll call the roving comedy night, where I get these 12 people who've never done comedy before but have had 8 weeks of intensive training. We'll get them, we'll split them up into 4 groups. So these 12 people are in 4 groups, and they will be led by a pro comic, and these 4 groups will go to a pub. They will do their first ever 5 minutes in one pub. And once they've done that, they'll move to the next pub, and then the next pub and the next pub. And as all of these groups move around, you get to do your 5 minutes 4 times in one evening. Yeah. The audience stay in the pub that they're in, and they basically have comedians come to them. So in essence, you get 12 newbies doing 5 minutes, and you get 4 pro comics doing 10 minutes, and then they have a break, and it's a really nice thing. And he's done it every year since. And out of those 12, I would say every year 1 or 2 get the bug and carry on. So he's that roving comedy night has birthed quite a few comedians of different levels that you might have come across. Do you know Mad Ron?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, so he was one of Logan's children. But anyway, my pro was, do you know Silky?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So my pro who was taking us round was really lovely. And I did my first 5 minutes in a pub. And I remember it being, the stage was a wooden pallet outside in the pub beer garden. And there was a PA mic system. And I've still got a photo of me on my first ever gig, holding my mic, talking to a real audience for the first time, and people are in the photo are laughing. So I was like, wow. And then, it went much better than I thought it would. And then the second one, we moved to the next pub, and it's like a 2-minute walk. We walked to the next pub, and we changed the order slightly. I think I was on second out of the 3 newbies, and I get up on stage, and my phone is in my pocket, and I'm going through my 5 minutes. It's the same 5 minutes that I've just done that went surprisingly well. And my phone starts vibrating, and you can tell it's a short vibrate. So it's a text, and it's and then it's a longer one, and I can tell it's someone trying to call me, and it's really putting me off my stride, and I'm sort of sweating, and I'm like, oh God, and it buzzes and it buzzes, and throughout the whole 5 minutes, it's like constant. I get off, and it is my sister, and my sister is basically texting me and phoning me, and all the texts say, get your ass to the hospital. My partner has gone into labour. And you're having your second child. And I knew it was a lot of, when I tell people, they say, "Oh, did you not know?" And I was like, "Of course I knew." I'm like, you've got fat recently. Of course I knew. But she was early, and it was our second one, and the first one was late, and we were like, "Oh, this will be fun." And I'd done the 8 weeks, and I'd said to my other half, You're fine with this, with me going. She's like, "No, it's not going to happen. Don't worry. You're okay." And she was actually going to come and join us in one of the pubs to watch us with my sister, which was why my sister was with her. And I was expecting to see her. I think it was the last pub she was going to be in. And I didn't know that they hadn't gone. And yeah, so as soon as I got that call, I was like, jumped in the Toyota Yaris, and I made it from Tring to the Luton and Dunstable Hospital, which sort of takes about 30 minutes, and I made it in about 15. Fly like Dukes of Hazzard style, flying over speed bumps. And I got there in time, and I faced the wrath of the midwives who were like, "Oh, you're the one who thinks it's more important to try and make strangers laugh than be here for your partner's big moment." And I got there in plenty of time. There was a good hour before the action kicked off. Yeah. But yeah, that was a memorable first one.
Yeah. To use the phrase you used of comedians getting the bug, apart from how memorable it was, did you get the bug at that point? Did you think this is something I want to rush back to?
It's a strange one, because I did have the bug, but at the same time, I didn't really have the means to act on it, because I'd now got a newborn baby, which I had a 2-year-old and a newborn, which for me and when you're starting off in those early years, you need to go and do open mic nights. And for me, I live in Luton, which is quite handy for getting up and down the country, and nice airport where I can jet off to all sorts of places, but also 25 minutes into St Pancras, so I can get into London quite easily. But I did have the bug, and I did have a couple of new material nights booked in. I remember towards the end of our sort of 8 weeks with Logan, he kind of gave us a few, there's this, I can't try to remember all of them. I mean, there was Angel was one of them, and there was Party Piece, which I think was in a pub in King's Cross, and there was Comedy Virgins. There was like 3 or 4 that he told us I put my name down for, and they were like spaced out across a year. They say, "Oh yeah, we can fit you in this would have been July," and they're like, "Oh, we can fit you in October, we can fit you in November." And I remember another one was the King Gong at the Comedy Store. So I think I had like 5 across a year, which isn't conducive to getting good at it, but But I did enjoy it, and I did have the bug. But I think what helped me was when Ben, who is the guy who runs the course, he runs the Tring comedy, and he also has a bookshop in Tring now. Like I said, he does this roving comedy thing every year, and I think he's done it now for, it might even be 15 years. And he invited me back because I didn't complete the 4 pubs, and I felt a little bit. He said, "Oh, we'll come back next year, and then you can be one of the." I'll put you in one of the groups. I think they had someone drop out sort of halfway through the course. So they were on 11 and they needed to make the numbers. They needed someone. And I was like, yeah, I'll do that. And so I did get to go back and complete it the year after. And then the year after that, he asked me back to be one of the compares in one of the pubs, which led on to me becoming Olaf Falafel. Because before that, I did it as myself as my own name. And it was sort of after that second year when I came back and I compared, I thought to myself, you know what, I might give this a go. So it took me, I did sporadic gigs, and I remember doing the King Gong and lasting the whole 5 minutes. And they do, when you last 5 minutes I don't know if it's the same, I've not been for a while, and this would have been 14 years ago. I remember they got us back up on stage, and there was a clap off, and I think it was Harriet Kemsley was the rightful winner. But yeah, it was the being invited back to compare. I'd never compared before. I'd barely done 5 minutes, and I kind of said, "Well, what do I need to do to compare?" He said, "Well, there'll be 4 points where you need to bring acts on, and you just need 5 minutes of stuff that you can say in those 4 points." And I was like, well, I've only got 5-10 minutes at best. I've got a good 5. Got me through the King Gong. And then I've got average 10. And so I just kind of sort of winged it a bit. And I remember having to bring on Arthur Smith and Tony Law in my and I'm thinking, oh God. But yeah, that's when I started thinking, oh, you know what, I do quite like this. And then I just took it a bit more. I thought, oh, the kids were a little bit older then. My other half was a lot more. But she was very supportive, completely supportive at me doing this, what essentially amounted to an unpaid hobby. Well, most hobbies are unpaid, but yeah, a hobby rather than an unpaid job. That's the words I was looking for. I did have a job. I think actually it coincided with me giving up working for a company as well. I went freelance, and that gave me a certain amount of freedom to do things and not have to be fresh as a daisy. Not that I was always fresh as a daisy. I'd quite often turn up a little worse for wear when you've got two young kids, and I was working in agencies in London, and you have to get up at 7 and then you'd be home by like 9 o'clock. So it was just really grueling. And I just thought to myself, I'd got myself an illustration job on the side that paid me almost as much as I'd earn in a year for working for the company that I was supposed to be working for.
Right.
And once I got paid that, I thought to myself, you know what? I'm going to see if I can just go freelance and do bits of design for companies for a couple of weeks, do bits of illustration, try my hand at comedy, and just see how it goes. Because I've got this little bonus pot of money that I was never expecting, that I can kind of, if nothing happens for 12 months, I've got a year's wage almost. Yeah. So I did that, and yeah, I was just surprised at how much I loved it, and how much fun it was. But yeah.
Well, let's talk about the surprises then. So what were the surprises that you encountered? What did you think that doing comedy might be, and what did it turn out to be for you?
I had no expectations whatsoever, so I didn't really know what comedy would be. I didn't have any like heroes or anyone who this is who I really want to be like. I remember I always liked weird, silly stuff. I loved Harry Hill, I still do, and I loved some of the more surreal things. I used to like things like the Mighty Boosh and one-linery comedians like Tim Vine and Milton Jones. Yeah. I used to try and write lots of silly little puns and jokes and things myself in my sort of advertising things. If there was ever a headline to be written, I was always the one who'd come up with the sort of pun. Some of them would be awful. Some of them would be quite clever. Some of them would be awful and clever at the same time. I put one on my social media the other day it was the perfect mix of highbrow and lowbrow. You'll only get it if you know Shakespeare's lesser known plays and you also have a juvenile sense of humour. And it was which Shakespeare play is about sticking felt tips up your bum? Colour Uranus. Which you need to know Yeah. It's a perfect mix of highbrow and lowbrow. But yeah, so in terms of surprise and what I was expecting, I wasn't really expecting anything, and I think that was one of the things of doing the sort of the London open mic scene. You would bump into such a range of people. You get some people who would be from completely different backgrounds, who'd be talking about their upbringing and how they might not have been born in this country and come to this country and how they find the world difficult and different and their perspective on some very British things. And you get some people who would be just completely weird. I remember one guy who, did he come on and smash a glass and then he was walking barefoot? It was just some nuts stuff. And I remember some of it being absolutely car crash awful. I remember seeing certain acts. I think I was watching a podcast yesterday or the day before. It was Sean Walsh's podcast, and he was talking to Harry Hill, and Harry was mentioning an act called Jimbo. And Jimbo was on one of I think it might have been my first ever open mic gig in London in Pear-Shaped Comedy. Yes. And he was on there, and I just remember watching that thinking, half of me was like, what the? And the other half was, this is amazing. And it was, there was some kind of epiphany there in that you can be rubbish and you can do weird stuff and you can make it funny. You can absolutely kill a room dead. And I've done stuff that I thought would be amazing and funny and has just got nothing. And then I've done other stuff that has been a little bit weird and has worked. And those early kind of things, I was doing a lot more wordplay things and routines. I had one routine that was all about not being able to go when you're stood at a urinal next to someone else. So it was a bit more observational, but I had a trick that was, you read the maker's mark of the toilet, so the branding on the back of the toilet. You get Royal Dalton, you get Armitage Shanks, and I would, if I was there and there was someone next to me, what I would do, I would look at the maker's mark and I would equate the first letter, or each letter of that maker's mark, into the initial of a football team. So Twyford would be Tottenham, Wrexham, York, Fulham, Oxford, Rangers, Derby, Swansea. And Armitage Shanks would have been Arsenal, Rangers, Middlesbrough, Ipswich, Tottenham, Aston Villa, Grimsby, Everton, Swansea, Hull, Aberdeen, Newcastle, Kidderminster, Sheffield United. And then by which time I'd be going, which is, that was a routine that I would love to do that again. Actually, I should do that again. I should bring that back. But it was a routine that I did. And it always worked. I can't remember what the punchline was or how it ended. I remember there was one line, there was a big guy next to me, like really intimidating guy. And I think the line that I had was, he looked like a DFS sofa that had learned to walk, and then it made me completely not be able to go. I can't remember how the routine ended. That was a sort of a solid part of my routine in the early days. But yeah, there was no real expectation, and I did love the meeting of all the different kinds of comedy, and having not been into comedy and not really being a scholar of it and not kind of being a comedy nerd, I didn't know what to expect. I was kind of surprised and sort of delighted by the amount of different people, and people doing musical comedy, people doing weird little sketch acts. Like my first ever. One of my first ever, I think it was my first or my second ever time I was up in Edinburgh, I stayed with a sketch duo called In Cahoots, and they were doing funny little sketches, and really, really good, really bright young lads who really worked at it, and they were very professional. We'd be sort of going out drinking and having a bit of a laugh of an evening, and they'd be there typing away saying, well, that one didn't quite work. How about if we change this word? And we'd go out for a few drinks, we'd come back, and they would be working on that one that we do about tennis. Should we say 20, 30 love or 15 love? And so they'd be really working on it. And it made me think, perhaps you do need to work on stuff to make it good, because they were really good, and they were getting the crowds in, and they were making a lot of money. It's coming up to the point where I'm working up some new things for my Edinburgh show, and I think we met at the Monday Club, the Museum of Comedy, last week or the week before. And I'm trying out a few new bits. And I did a thing last night, and it was a new material night in it's the Comedy Tavern, North London Tavern in Kilburn. Yeah. And there were only 5 people in the audience, and it really took me back to when I was starting out. I was like, this takes me back. And the other acts were brilliant and lovely, and the audience were sparse but lovely. Didn't quite work for me because of the 5, I think 3 of them didn't speak English as their first language. And the other 2 were sisters who were, I'm guessing, I want to be kind and say they were in their 60s, but they might well have been in their 70s. Pauline and Yvonne. And they clearly weren't understanding of the rules of you have to keep quiet when you're watching a comedian, and you don't kind of narrate and suggest ways of improving. But it was a fun night.
You mentioned earlier about the birth of Olaf Falafel, and I'm interested in how much of the person that we see is the person themselves, how much of it is the character. And obviously, when you go on stage and you are playing a version of yourself, a character of yourself, how much does it reflect the real you, and how much does it give you that distance between you and the audience?
It does. Well, I wanted the name first of all because in my job as a CEO of a FTSE 100 company, I needed to keep the comedy separate. No, it actually the name started. So it was back to that comparing thing. Actually, I didn't have enough material, and I remember watching. So what I did watch was it Live at the Apollo, where there were a couple of comedians who did it. I'm pretty sure Omid Jalili did it and Stephen K. Amos did it, where they came out And their first 2 minutes, Stephen K. Amos was kind of doing, I'm not going to do the accent because I'll get cancelled. It was kind of a stereotypical sort of African accent.
Yes.
And I think Omid Jalili did a similar thing.
Yeah, he did Iranian, a very exuberant.
Yeah. And then after 5 minutes, they kind of slipped into their kind of, oh God, that's exhausting keeping that up. And then sort of, this is who I am sort of thing. And I thought, well, I'll do that. And what I did get quite a lot, I listened to your one with Ali Bryce actually yesterday on the train back, and he was talking about how a lot of people sort of are into music, sport, but he wasn't into really those things. I was really into music, sport. I played football, loved football, and I was playing football just before my second daughter was born. So I used to play a lot when I was younger. And then I kind of took it back up again, and I played with a load of my mates, and I used to play on a Saturday and a Sunday and twice during the week.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much you know about football, Mark. You've probably not got enough time.
Zero.
Well, there was a player called Olaf Melberg who was tall. He had a sort of a beard, Swedish.
The beard was Swedish.
His beard was Swedish, yeah. And I used to get called, other opposition teams would say that someone mark Olaf at the corner, or if I was a defender, so I would go up for corners to try and head the ball in, and they would kind of call me Olaf or the Swede or Viking, and I just thought, I could do a kind of an Omid Jalili, Stephen K. Amos, I'll pretend to be Swedish and then come out of it in 5 minutes. So I'd written a set that was all sort of, I had one joke that was about Bjorn Borg underwear that I've not done this in God knows how long, so I won't. It was something along the lines of, I wear, like all good Swedes, I wear the Bjorn Borg underpants, although I call them my John McEnroe's because of the elastic at the side has come loose, and I would go, the ball was out. So that was kind of the flavour. And then once I'd done my sort of 5 minutes of me being this sort of sing-songy, rough, Viking-y character, I would then break out there saying, no, I'm only joking. I'm actually from Luton. And it got a bit of a laugh. But then after that, people were like, oh, we preferred you when you were doing kind of weird, stupid stuff about IKEA pencils. And so I thought, oh, okay. So and it became quite a nice vehicle to people believed the weirder stuff, or bought into, not necessarily believe, but were happy to get on board with the weirder stuff if I put on a slightly gruff sort of accent and kind of went, okay, right, I'm going to talk to you now about boiled eggs. And I used to have a joke where I'd say, oh God, again, I keep saying I'm going to butcher these things that I've not said in ages. It was, I am a pacifist. To the point where I will no longer have boiled egg with soldiers because of the military regime that they represent. But I do like a boiled egg with something to dip in it. So what I do, I take a pack of Smarties. I take out all of the blue Smarties. I affix them to the top of the soldiers with a little blob of marmalade, and I have boiled egg and UN peacekeepers. So it's my kind of, my reference for and people were saying, you don't sound Swedish at all, you sound more German. My reference was actually Swedish and Danish and Norwegian footballers who have come to play for Man United or Liverpool and have kind of developed a sort of a half Scandinavian, half Mancunian, so I'd think to myself, well, that's my kind of excuse. If it does slip out, it's because I've been here that long. Yeah. And it was quite funny because it was great for me, because it meant that I could keep my work stuff separate from my comedy stuff, having a different name. And it also meant it was a kind of a mask. It gave me a little bit more confidence to have something I could hide behind. And it also was very much like, Milton Jones talks about his hair being sort of wild and crazy. As soon as he comes on, people know, well, right, this guy's not going to be serious. He's not going to be talking about, Israel, Palestine. He's going to be doing some silly things that we're going to have to kind of buy into and suspend disbelief. So me coming on, I always try and start with something that's a little bit strange, or a little bit of a song, or a little bit of something. I used to do, I got my first real 6-string, bought it at the 5 and dime, played it till my fingers bled. Turns out it was a cheese grater. So yeah, so just, In fact, I'm going to write all this down and bring it back for I'm struggling for material for my Edinburgh show, so why not just rehash stuff that I've not done? It feels fresh to me, so I'm sure it'll feel fresh to the audience. I'm genuinely going to do that. I'll listen back to this and think, right, UN Peacekeepers, that's going in. So, yeah, if you come to my Edinburgh show this year, don't be surprised if I do those 2 bits. I forgot how much I enjoyed doing that. So yeah, I would always try and start off with something that was a little bit strange, a little bit kind of just to give you the vibe of what's going to happen. And I do like to pepper a few bad gags, bad one-liners, which I know are bad, but I love that. And I love the fact that they're terrible. And for me, part of it is finding different vehicles to deliver the material in a way that doesn't get samey. And it's things like, I watch Tim Vine. I'm not like, I've got a few jokes that are similar to Tim Vine, but I can't do his like 200 jokes in an hour or however many he does. I need a funny act out or a funny prop or a funny situation or a little bit of audience participation. And I enjoy making funny videos, and I enjoy, being sort of creative with visuals, and I guess it comes back to the sort of the art, the design, the illustration. So my shows tend to be a mixture of funny little observations, jokes, weird little songs, some videos, some audience participation. It is a real kind of hit and miss mesh of stuff, which doesn't sell it very well. But you've been to one of my shows before, and I try and squish as many different ideas and as many different. Some of it relates to my real me when you're talking back to how much is it you. Like, well, last night, for example, it was a new material night. There were 5 people in, and I had a clipboard of things that weren't necessarily jokes, but things I just wanted to talk through. And one of the things was, my show in Edinburgh this year is called Olaf Falafel. I used to work in a helium balloon factory until they let me go. And one of the names that I was going to give my show, a contender that I got rid of, and I'll probably say this in my show, is Olaf Falafel hooks Shakira's hips up to a polygraph test. Because as we know, Shakira claims that her hips don't lie. But that leads me on to something that happened. I started listening to Shakira back, and she was big sort of in the early 2000s. And to some people, she's probably never gone away. But to me, she kind of went away. But she had a song called Whenever, Wherever. Whenever, Wherever. Do you know the one?
I do. I know it well.
I remember at the time, so this would have been about 2015, I had a load of postal tubes, and I made some panpipes out of postal tubes, like really big panpipes. And I remember just miming along to it and it being quite funny. So I might do that with postal tubes. But anyway, I digress. I didn't really listen to the lyrics the first time round, but I was kind of listening to the lyrics, and she lists a lot of things that she's lucky for.
Yes.
I don't know what the first verse is, but in the second verse, it starts off with, lucky that my lips not only mumble, they spill kisses like a fountain. Lucky that my breasts are small and humble, so you don't confuse them with mountains. Yeah. And that line, lucky that my breasts are small and humble, so you don't confuse them with mountains, just made me laugh. Yeah. And it just made me. When I get something stuck in my head, I will say it all the time. Lucky that my breasts are small and humble, so you don't confuse them with mountains. And I just was saying this. When I heard this, I was just saying it probably non-stop for a week, much to the annoyance of my other half and my 2 daughters. My 2 daughters now, they've grown up. One has literally grown up with my comedy career. And so they from the age of sort of 4 and 6, they've been coming to the Edinburgh Festival, and they kind of know what Dad does for a living, in quote marks. And they used to find me funny when there was a sweet spot of sort of 8 and 10 when I was like amazing. But now they're 14 and 16, and I will go up to them. I literally went into the 14-year-old's bedroom yesterday, because I knew I'm doing this new material night. I'm thinking, I might talk about this. And I went to my 14-year-old. I went, you okay? You have a good day at school? And sort of got a grunt from her. I went, it's lucky, isn't it, really? And she went, what? I went, lucky that my breasts are small and humble, so you don't confuse them with mountains. And she went, she wanted to be annoyed, but she couldn't help but laugh. And I was like, I got you. And it's great when I finally do get them. And then she went, get out, you're stupid. And so I was telling the story of that, in front of 3 non-English speakers and 2 octogenarians. No, they weren't octogenarians. That's doing it.
They're getting older as the episode goes.
Yeah. But the point of, I was really annoying my other half with it, and she was cooking dinner, and I was look at them, my breasts are small and humble, and she was in the kitchen, and we've got those sunken lights in the kitchen, and they're quite tricky to change, and so I'm on a stool, and she's down. There's like 3 of them, and she's cooking on one. It's almost like when bombers used to fly over to Germany and they'd come back with one engine on. She was cooking with one light on, and I'm like, well, I should do this. So I unclipped one of them and I changed it, and I'm lucky that my breasts as I'm changing it. And then I do the second one, and then I'm doing that, and I'm saying, lucky that my breasts, and the wiring is loose, and I'm on a stool and I electrocute myself. I fall off, and I get up and I've got like a jolt to my arm where the electricity shot up and hit and I'm really aching my shoulder. And it's in that point that I think to myself, if I'd have died then, my obituary, my last words would have been, lucky that my breasts are small and humble so you don't confuse them with mountains. And so, yeah, that is from my real life. So there are some things that I do say, and I might tell that story in my Edinburgh show, just because it's quite funny. But what I will do is add a bit of a visual. So perhaps add some panpipes made out of packing tubes. But I do like to tell. So I did one Edinburgh show where it was the true story of how I would like to be talking of death again. What I would like my funeral to be. And I've told my kids and my other half this, and they were kind of like, oh, we're not going to do that. I said, well, I'm going to do it in an Edinburgh show, and then you'll have to do it because it will be documented then. And so I did that a couple of years back. It was all to do with having my ashes scattered from a hot air balloon whilst a ska band plays Johnny Cash's Ring of Fire. And oh yeah, that was the point. And I want all of the audience to have those foam fingers. The audience, the mourners, to have those foam fingers that you get in sporting events. Those big foam fingers. But on one side it says "dads," and on the other side "dead." And that's what I want. And they're going to have to do that now because I've documented that in a show. What was the question?
I have no idea. You're talking about your Edinburgh show, but you've got at least 2 Edinburgh shows, as well as the Helium Balloon Factory. You've got the kids show, the Stupidest Super Stupid Show.
The Stupidest Super Stupid Show, yeah. The name gets longer every year. Yes. So I first did comedy for kids. So, oh God, there's a massive jump from doing comedy to doing comedy for kids. There is, I don't know if you've heard of Comedy Club for Kids,
yes,
which is a wonderful, wonderful organisation. That's the right word. And they put on stand-up comedy shows. So 3 comics and a compere, or 2 comics and a compere, for kids. Yeah. And it's well-known comedians. So in the past, they've had Nish Kumar, Stuart Goldsmith, James Acaster. They're people that you've heard of. Probably aren't doing it now because they're multi-millionaire-y, famous-y people. But when they were sort of starting or at a certain point, they did that, and they still have really good lineups. And I got asked to do that, and I thought, oh, brilliant, because my comedy was quite silly anyway, quite stupid. I don't really need to tailor it too much. And I would walk my kids to school, and I would tell them ideas of stuff for what I could do in Comedy Club for Kids. There was a bit where I had, it was based on a funny video that I did where I got a bald puppet of Donald Trump with no hair, and I got a croissant, and I kind of ripped the croissant and put it on top, and it looked like his hair. And then through his mouth, I've got a whoopee cushion that fed the bit through his mouth, and I just farted, and it was like a realistic talking Donald Trump puppet. But I would talk to my kids about things on the walk to school. And one of the ideas that I had was taking Old MacDonald Had a Farm and changing it to Old MacDonald Heard a Fart, and just coming up with the different fart noises that all the different animals would make. So what would a cow's fart be like? How would a duck fart be different? And we kind of came up to the decision that a duck fart would be quite tight. And we were singing it, and it kind of spread around their school. And a lot of the kids were singing it and making up different fart noises. And the dinner ladies got annoyed by it and they banned it. And the banning led me to think, oh, this, there could be something in this. And I'd had an illustration job cancel on me, and it was meant to be a week's worth of illustration. And I thought, well, I've got a week sat doing nothing. I could come up with some more comedy things, or I could take this idea and turn it into a book. So I did a cover for Old MacDonald Heard a Fart.
Yeah.
I did the inside spreads, and I did these little panels on each spread that told you, right, to make a duck fart, you need to pucker your mouth small and tight, like the knotted end of a balloon. And instead of blowing out, you suck in. So it's like, and like the horse fart, I think from memory, you had to kind of stick your tongue out and bite your tongue and then kind of blow from the side of your mouth. So each fart had a different mouth instruction. So I was drawing this and thinking, oh, this could be quite a fun thing. And I didn't know anything about children's publishing or how to get a kid's book made. And I remember going to an open mic night in Kentish Town in a basement and putting a tweet out. I wasn't like mega famous or anything on Twitter, but I think I had like 6,000 followers, which was okay at the time. And I remember putting a thing out saying, I've had this idea for a kid's book. Here's the cover. Here are 3 or 4 inside spreads. Before I go any further, do you reckon anyone would buy this? And I went and did this gig. When I came back out again, it had like a couple of hundred retweets, and I'd had a couple of emails from publishing agents saying, oh, we'd love to chat with you. We'd love to sort of, with respect to representing you. And then I'd actually had a publisher contact me direct saying, yeah, we'd definitely be interested in it. And quite a big one. It was David Williams' editor. And it was a whirlwind. In the space of a week, I'd signed a publishing deal, and the book was set to be published. I think it was months. It wasn't. Normally, it takes a year. I've subsequently learned that was my first book, and I've now done, I think, 14. Some are picture books, some are chapter books. I had a book called It's One Giant Leak for Mankind. 2019, 50th anniversary of the moon landings. It's a semi-biographical depiction of the events that led up to the moon landing. But when they get there, the astronauts have their landing module stolen by moon baboons, blue moon baboons, that play the bottom bassoon, and they've stolen their capsule. They're stuck on the moon and they think they're going to be doomed, perish forever. And because they're doing experiments on the moon with like plants and seeds and rocks and things, they notice that a seed that they've dropped has grown. And because of the moon's unique atmospheric gravity, it's grown into a giant leak. And they're really hungry because they've not eaten any food. They start to eat the leak, and they've noticed that the leak alliums, which leak is part of the allium family, they make you fart. And they had a brainwave that they would hollow out the leak and they would fart themselves back to Earth inside a leak. And so that was one giant leak. And I took that around schools, doing assemblies, and it's a lot of fun doing school assemblies because I treat them basically like a stand-up gig for kids, and I try and fit as many funny things in. I tell them a bit more about writing, and I show them how I draw some of the characters, and so that's makes it slightly different to a normal stand-up gig. And I thought, well, I'll do that in Edinburgh. It was 2019. It was the year before COVID. I'm glad I did it, because I just probably wouldn't have. If COVID had come a year earlier, I probably would never have done any comedy for kids. And it went really well. And then after COVID, the next year back, I did my Olaf Falafel. It was more the one that I did with Giant League. It was more of an assembly rather than a comedy show. It was a bit more of what I was doing in schools rather than it being a full-on comedy show. Whereas now I thought, well, I could take that, and it was actually the Leicester Comedy Festival where we've met before at Leicester. So I'm good friends with Paul F. Taylor. We had an idea to write a kids show that was almost like a play, a 2-man play, kind of a bit Mighty Boosh-ish. But for kids. And it was called Voyage of the Barnacle. And the Barnacle was a pirate radio station. And we'd both been exiled for unknown reasons to this pirate radio station. And we have to kind of serve our time there before being allowed back on the mainland. And we'd written this thing, and it was really funny. And then Paul, bless him, we'd booked the Firebug. We'd sold 50 tickets. And Paul got COVID literally the day or a couple of days before and couldn't do it. And it was like a 2-man thing. And I just thought, well, you know what? rather than sort of cancel and say to these 50 people, return your money and go, I will put on a comedy show.
Mm-hmm.
So I came up with a comedy show, and the first time I did it was in Leicester, and it worked really well. And it made me think, because I wasn't planning on doing another kids comedy show apart from this thing with Paul. And I thought, that actually worked really well. I should do this in Edinburgh. And I took it to Edinburgh, and it was called my Super Stupid Show.
Yeah.
And then I did it the year after, and it was my Stupidest Super Stupid Show. And then, no, the year after was my Super Stupid Show, 20% more stupid.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And then I did my Stupidest Super Stupid Show. And then I did my Stupidest Super Stupid Show, New Improved Recipe. And this year it is called my Stupidest Super Stupid Show. This time it's stupid. And it is basically just a lot of the stuff that I do in it is stuff that I do in my grown-up show, and vice versa. Because the stuff that I do in my grown-up show, I can get away with doing in a kid's show. And some of the best things that I've done in my grown-up show are things that started as an idea for a kid's show. And the grown-ups love it just as much as the kids. And the grown-ups who see me doing something for the kids in my grown-up show don't feel cheated, because at heart, we are all just kids, and we all are all just stupid. And I do get quite a few comics who've got kids of a certain age who will come along, and I think Richard Herring's come along last year, and Alex Horn's come along, and Jeff Norcott. Chris Ramsey has brought his son a couple of times. So there's been a few, and it's really nice when you see a comedian bringing their kids, because it's a certain amount of validation there. And I've been going up to Edinburgh with my two. They come up for a week in the middle, and I've been to some fairly tedious stuff with them. And some absolutely fantastic stuff. I remember watching Martin Moore before I'd even contemplated doing a kids show, before I'd even got a kids book deal. I remember seeing him doing a comedy show for kids, and it was a lot of fun. It wasn't quite my style. It wasn't quite weird and surreal like I try and make mine. But it was certainly you can be a comedian doing like comedy stuff and then also do something. And Martin was, I love Martin. He's great. But that has kind of gone from strength to strength. Yeah. And the last 3 years I've been at the Counting House Ballroom, which is like a nice, lovely 150 seater, and it's sold out the last couple of years. Yeah. So touch wood, it'll do well again. But it's always one of those things where you worry that people aren't going to turn up, and they do, thankfully.
So you're talking about people coming to your gigs, but you are award-winning comedian, award-winning for not only for your kids' picture, but you're for a kids' shows have won an award, your posters have won an award, your jokes have won an award. How do you feel about awards and competitions, and do you have a competitive side?
I think, as I can't remember who said it, but all awards are worthless until you win one. Yeah. Which is it's very easy to dismiss awards when someone else has won and you're like, that means nothing. But when you win one, of course, your ego gets a lovely stroke, and you feel, especially when there's money attached, they're the best ones. I won one the other day for one of my kids' books, and there was a lovely pot of prize money attached, which I was very Laugh Out Loud, the Lollies they're called, Laugh Out Loud Children's Book Awards, and it was nice because it was just before Christmas, and it was on the South Bank, the award ceremony, and it was one of these awards. It was hosted. Michael Rosen was one of the hosts, and a lot of the authors who were nominated were there. But also there was about 300-400 kids in the audience. They'd been bussed in from different schools, and they were all there in their high vis. So it was great to just hear them laughing, and it was at the height of 6'7". Oh yeah. My book was nominated for the age 6 to 8 category, and it won. It was one of 4 books, and it won that category. And I got up, and as part of my acceptance speech, I said, it's a great privilege. It's great to be a winner in the 6 to 8 category. The only thing for me that would have been better would have been being in the 6-7 category. And then you hear 300 kids all go 6-7, absolutely losing it, which is terrible for the teachers. But But no, I do. Awards do help. Obviously, they do get your name out there because people will then mention them in their websites and tweet about them, and you can stick them on the back of your book, or you can stick them on the poster. And like my kids' show, it won the best comedy show at the Leicester Festival in 2024, which I've still got on the top of my flyers. And it's always good. It's a lovely mark of quality because the Leicester Comedy Festival has got a kind of, it's respectable. And I remember, certainly when I was first starting out in comedy, I like the King Gong at the Comedy Store, doing that, as well as it giving you a little ego boost. People then will see you and you might get offered a few more things. I went back and did it and won it. And they give you 10-minute spots at the Comedy Store. And I did a few of them before Don took me into his room and said, "Yeah, you're not for us." And I've not been back. But I agreed with him. I was like, "Yeah, you're right." So yeah, I did win. Actually, I did win. There was a comedy competition quite early on called the Golden Jester, and that came with a cheque for £1,000, and also some gigs, and also handing me the big comedy cheque. It was Denzel from Only Fools and Horses. He was the celebrity who was handing the cheque. So that was really good. So some awards are better than others. Some, how competitive I am. I don't necessarily feel jealous at all when I see people doing well.
Yeah.
Most of the time, I'm really happy for people doing really well, and most of the time, the people who deserve it get on. And like I say, it is a relative. It does police itself, and it is a relative meritocracy. There are certain aspects that aren't good, and people will tell you there are aspects of the comedy scene that are classist. And sexist and racist and misogynist, and but then there are other sort of leveling factors. If you are one of those acts who is all of those things, you're not going to progress, or you're not going to progress as quickly as people who aren't, or you're going to find your time cut short, and you're not going to win competitions, and you're not going to go on because people won't back people who aren't particularly pleasant. Having said that, there obviously are a few exceptions to that rule, but comedy competitions and awards and things are great when you win them. Yeah. And I am really proud of all of the ones that I've won.
Yeah.
Like winning the best joke was lovely, and that was a real whirlwind for a day. And then 24 hours later, I was getting attacked by the Tourette's Association. And so the joke was that one was, I keep randomly shouting out broccoli and cauliflower. I think I might have florets. And for the first sort of 24, 36 hours, it was interviews on Sky, on the BBC, radio interviews. It was like constant newspapers. And my show went from being well attended to people were queuing out and having to disappoint like 50 people every day. So yeah, you're not going to get in, because I was on I still am on the free fringe, where you have to get up early and then get in early, and then donate afterwards rather than buy a ticket. Although my kids' show, you can buy a ticket. Then it turned into, after sort of adulation and interviews, and it turned into the Tourette's Association became offended by it and were seeking an apology from me. And I remember getting an invite from BBC Breakfast to sit down with the chair of Tourette's Association UK or someone. And I remember speaking to my literary agent. He said, "There's no way you can win. So you apologise. It won't be enough. So I would advise just not doing it." And so I just didn't go on it, and I didn't speak about it at all. And it kind of took the shine off it a bit. And I did have some great comics and friends of mine who do have Tourette's sort of tell me that, mate, these people need to get a grip. There's nothing. If this is all you've got to worry about, then your life's pretty rosy. And I did have some people telling me, if you've got a child who's got Tourette's, then this could be seen as a stick to beat them with. And I guess I hadn't thought of it like that. But then you can go down the nth degree of every single joke that I've ever done and think, well, there's someone could be offended by that. I remember like the joke list, the Dave's top 10 joke list. I'd been on it the year before with, I wasn't that close to my dad before he died, which was lucky because he trod on a landmine. You could have someone who's lost a leg to a landmine in a conflict or something who would be offended by that. So you can, yeah, that didn't happen. And I don't really shout broccoli and cauliflower, and I don't have florets. And so there are certain things you've got to kind of realize, yeah, it's just a joke. There is no target here. I'm not gunning for the, but to sum up, yeah, all awards are worthless until you win one.
What about comedy for you as an entertainment? Do you still watch comedy? Are you a good audience member?
I mean, saying that I was listening to Ali Bryce's one yesterday, I was that a lot of that resonated with me, where he talks about you kind of, and a lot of comics will tell you this. You sit there and you analyze it and you work it out and you try and see, well, I can see where he's going with this, or this is going to be a pullback and reveal, or oh yeah, I got there before the audience, and you try and work it out. And my favourites are acts where I don't know where they're going, and I love people like Terry Alderton. Yeah, he's one of my faves. I like people like Harry Hill, and people that surprise me, and people that they're just going to do something really silly. And even if the joke I can see coming a mile off, the way it's done, I just think, yeah, this is just joyous. Yeah. And so there are people, and there are people similar to Ali said, like John Kearns. I go and see him every year, and I love watching him. And I love people like Matt Ewan, so I can just sit and watch and just think, well, I don't do this, and this is people who do stuff that I don't do. I love and traditional stand-ups. I remember going to see Glenn Wool and just thinking, oh, this is the funniest thing I've seen in ages, and he's just such a great stand-up, and I've seen him for the last 3 years. So there are certain acts that I will see and just sit and relax and enjoy like a punter. And then there are others where I'll sit and I'll just be like, I'm trying to guess, and I'm not in relax mode.
Well, where are you then at your most relaxed? Where are you at your happiest? Is it in writing or illustrating the books? Is it in coming up with the stand-up shows, performing in front of the audience? Where are you happiest?
Well, I do like the performing is probably one of the most, I like writing. Well, I actually, no, I don't really like writing. I like coming up with the ideas. Right. So that is kind of, for me, I don't write a lot of it down. Well, and I don't know whether this is the same for a lot of comedians. It might well be, but I will go for a walk and an idea will half form in my head, or I'll think to myself, well, that thing, like, at the minute I've got a thing in my head. I don't know what it's going to be, but I know it'll be something. Yeah. It's that thing where you, I think it was Billy Connolly who said, I don't trust someone who, when left in a room with a tea cozy, doesn't put it on their head. Yeah. And I've got a similar thing with tape measures. I don't trust someone who, when left with a tape measure, doesn't try to extend it as far as they can. And I thought, what I want to do is either have like a battle where we get two people who try and extend a tape measure on stage for as long as they can, or get two people facing each other and put something on either tape measure, like two little models of people who have to kiss. And we see if we can get the audience to get them from one side to the other to kiss, and perhaps have some music playing. So it's things like that. I'll have a thought in my head, well, that could be funny. And then I'll just write down tape measure kiss in my thing. And then my notes app is full of stuff like that. And some of it gets made and some of it doesn't. And some of it will get revisited 5 years later. And I'll think, well, why didn't I do that? And I will come back to it. And some stuff will be like this year, I'm probably going to do, and because I've just started doing it again. I did it in an Edinburgh show about 5 years ago, and it's the Pet Shop Toy Orchestra. Did you ever see that?
Don't recall.
It's squeaky Pet Shop toys. And I bought 50 odd just so I could get 6 in the right note to play Johann Strauss's Blue Danube Waltz. And I did it in Edinburgh as part of a show. And then I thought, well, I could do that in my kids' show. And it's a lot of fun doing it in my kids' show. And the way I do it, Guitar Hero is a video game where the notes, do you know Guitar Hero? Where the notes they come down and you have to hit the note as it hits the line. Yes. And so I thought, well, I'll have the squeaky toy. So I've got like a squeaky cow, a squeaky duck, a squeaky pig, a spotty pig, and they will come down. And as soon as the person who is holding that particular squeaky toy, their toy hits the line, they squeak it. Yeah. And if they do it well, it does play Johann Strauss's Blue Danube Waltz. Of course, they get it wrong, and it's funnier. But I did that in my grown-up show, and the beauty or the idiocy for me, probably idiocy because I just don't capitalise on it. I do my Edinburgh show for August, and then I just leave it and I don't do it again. Rarely I will do a one-off at the Museum of Comedy, but I don't tour it. I tour my kids' show, which I'm doing at the minute, and I'm touring that all over, and I'm doing it in Edinburgh, and then I'm doing it after Edinburgh, and I'm touring it. But my actual grown-up show, I don't tour it, so unless you saw it that particular year on those 25 days in Edinburgh, you'll never see it again. And that makes me think, well, I should just bring a few bits back that worked really well. And the only people who will know are reviewers or like real kind of comedy nerds. And a lot of the real comedy nerds will appreciate seeing it again because it was funny the first time and it will work again.
Yeah.
So I'm going to bring that back. And I've been doing that in my kids' show, and I've fallen in love with it again. I thought, why did I stop doing this? And I think part of that is my ADHD brain, which I've not been diagnosed. And it is incredibly cliche for people to say that, but I definitely do think I have some kind of inability to stick to one thing, whether it is ADHD or not, whether it's just who I am, my personality. But part of that is once I've got bored of doing something 25 days in a row, I'll have another idea for something else, and it'll be tape measures, or it'll be so I've got a kids book coming out. It is called Dave Don't Give Up. It's all about a dung beetle who has to push a ball of dung up a hill, and it's a metaphor for life. And I thought what would be fun to do is a game where I get one of the kids to be a futuristic dung beetle called Dave. And I've got a polystyrene ball of dung, and I've got like a really powerful, it's a compressed air gun that is used for like blowing the crumbs out of keyboards and that sort of thing. But if you point it upwards, you can make this polystyrene ball of dung hover. I'm going to get a kid to be a futuristic dung beetle. I've got a disco ball helmet with some dung beetle kind of antenna things, some safety specs, a little name tag that says Dave. So I'm going to ask them what their name is, and I'm going to say no. For the rest of this show, you're Dave, and I'll slap the sticker on, and I will get them to traverse some kind of obstacle course whilst hovering a floating dung beetle with a very loose story or rationale that in the future dung beetles won't be pushing balls of poo themselves; they'll be hovering balls because they'll be. And so that's now my thing, rather than the thing that I did. And what I also want to do to make it tougher is to have other kids in the audience or grown-ups throwing. I'll make a story about how because of climate change, climate has radically changed and there are differing weather patterns, including quite violent hailstorms. Yeah. And I will get kids in the audience to throw ping pong balls at this poor child whilst he's trying to do it, just to make it more difficult. So that's the kind of thing you could expect from my stupidest, super stupid show. But I also think that would work well in a grown-up show. Yeah. So
I was trying to remember what you had me doing at I think it was Orange You're Glad. I guess it was last year. And you had me fire. The other person was wearing a bum bag or fanny pack or something. I was shooting elastic bands or something into. I can't remember.
No, were you throwing a sausage in a bum bag, or was it? Or was it the bogey in the bogey box?
It must have been sausage, I guess.
It was sausage in my bum bag, yeah. Can you get your sausage in my bum bag? Can you get your sausage in my fanny pack? Fanny pack, fanny pack, fanny pack. Yeah. And then if you got it, I then read you a blessing.
That was it.
And we sit, and then at the end of the blessing, instead of saying hallelujah, we said Halle Berry. And the blessings were just silly little kind of thoughts like, may you never ascend the stairs and think that there's an extra stair and do that weird trippy over thing. And that me talking about vehicles for my stuff. So a lot of the time is I have a thought in my head like, oh, isn't it funny when you're going up the stairs and you think there's an extra stair and there's not? You kind of do that weird trip thing. How can I squeeze that into a show? I know I'll turn them into like blessings, or I'll turn them into. So in my kids show and in my grown up show, I did pass the parcel. And then under each layer, there's a feeling. And it's a certain nice feeling. Things like when you are cooking with a hot pan and you plunge it into a cold sink and it goes tss, and you feel like you're a blacksmith. So it's a vehicle really for me to deliver these feelings. Well, I'm thinking I want to do Pass the Parcel, but it's going to be pasta parcel. So it's going to be a big ravioli, a parcel of pasta, a pasta parcel. And I'm going to make a giant ravioli that will get passed throughout the audience. And when the music stops, I don't know quite what the mechanism is, but there'll be like a flap on it and inside will be something. But yeah, so it's things like that I'm thinking of. And half of these things will make it into my show and half will make it into the next one when I've had more time to think about it. But I write it all down in my notes app, and it normally happens on my walk to somewhere. Yeah, that's the gist of it really. And some of it is me thinking of like little puns, little jokes like pasta parcel.
Yeah.
But then it's another part is then how can I turn that into something different? How can I make that visually interesting? How can I turn that into a group activity? I like my Edinburgh shows to have a feeling of it. We're all in a group. We're all doing something stupid together. And obviously not serious, and there's no real message apart from don't take yourself too seriously.
How can listeners find out all about you and where they can see you performing?
Google Olaf, Olaf Falafel, like the food stuff, and I'm pretty sure I'm the only Olaf Falafel. And yeah, I'm doing my kids show, so if you've got kids who are sort of between 5 and 11, 5 and 12, 4 and 12, that sort of age, come along. I'm going on tour in towns and cities around the UK, but I'm also going to be in Edinburgh doing my kids show there. I'm also doing my grown-up show in Edinburgh at the Pear Tree, back at the Pear Tree for the 5th, 6th year, I think. And so it's a lovely room. I like the room there. Buy my books as well. I've actually got 4 books out this year. So I've got a graphic novel, so a comic book. It's called The Far Out 5. It's about 4 kids and a grumpy old magician who get transformed into 5 completely new characters, and they get whisked off by a magical tornado to a far off land, and they've got to try and work out how they can get themselves back to normal and also get home. It's kind of like the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon that I used to watch when I was younger, where they get turned into like barbarians and wizards, and they're kind of lost in a weird land and they want to get back home. So I wanted something like that. And so one of the characters is a unicorn called Spunicorn. The girl gets turned into a bathtub. The magician gets turned into a grumpy old koala called Wally. There's a seal called Glossy Jeff, who's a super cool seal. But the main villain in the first one is a much less impressive cousin of Medusa. And instead of snakes for hair, she's got worms for hair. And she is called Meduli, which is it's a joke that only the grown-ups will get. But I like to sneak grown-up jokes in there. But yeah, it's a graphic novel. So it's basically a full-color comic book that I've written and illustrated. And that came out in February. And the second one, so it's part of a trilogy so far, depending on how many people buy them. Could be more. But at the minute, yeah, they're published by Puffin, which my last couple of books have been. I had a joke book out last year called A Poo on a Pogo Stick. That was published by Puffin. And the sequel to The Far Out 5, Snot Jelly Island is the name of the first one. The sequel to that is out in September. And I've got Dave Don't Give Up, which is my picture book. That's out next month. So yeah, I've got, you can find all my books, and they're all quality publications. if you like silly humor.
In all good bookshops.
Yes, definitely.
So I'll ask you the last question that I have then for you, which is, how would you sum up comedy in a nutshell?
Wow. I would say, for me, comedy is the best medicine. Laughter is the best medicine. It is. I know that you can say, oh, well, my granddad didn't think that when he was dying of. But for me, I like to make people laugh. I like to make people happy. I don't like to make them think necessarily. I'm like, you can make people think, but you can make people think and not be funny. But I think you've got to make people happy. And I guess that's part of me as a people pleaser-y type of person, is I want people to go away just feeling a little bit brighter and just forget about, I mean, you'll quite quickly remember about the shit going on in your life. But for that hour or that 5 minutes or that 20 minutes, just dive into a world that is just a bit silly and a bit happy. And that for me, hopefully it is a medicine.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being my guest. It's been happy and silly and fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Cheers, Mark.